This meeting will now come to order. Today's meeting is being conducted by video teleconference, and we welcome those of you joining us via the meeting portal. I will now read the EPSB mission statements. The Education Professional Standards Board, in full collaboration and cooperation with its education partners, promotes high levels of student achievement by establishing and enforcing rigorous professional standards for preparation, certification, and responsible and ethical behavior of all professional educators in Kentucky. Sharon Chesser joins us today as Board Secretary. Ms. Chesser, thank you for joining us. Please call the roll.
Okay. Amanda Ellis.
Amanda Ellis, present.
Susan Reber.
Present.
Diane Berry.
Diane Berry, present.
Elijah Edwards. CJ Fryer.
CJ Fryer, present.
Kathy Gunn. Priscilla Keller. Amy Lingo.
Amy Lingo, present.
Jacqueline Mayfield. Corinne Murphy.
Corinne Murphy, present.
Meredith Pittman.
Meredith Pittman, present.
Lisa Rosinski. Vice Chair Snell.
Present.
Chair Mitchell.
Justin Mitchell, present.
We have quorum.
Thank you so much. I would also like to welcome Dr. Robbie Fletcher, who has officially joined KDE as Commissioner of Education on July 1st. In his new role, Dr. Fletcher also serves as his Executive Secretary to the EPSB. Due to time constraints, we do not have reports on today's agenda, but we will have a full report from Dr. Fletcher at our next meeting. So I want to make sure, I know we already have, but welcome Dr. Fletcher and thank you for joining us this morning. At this time, I think we are ready for action items. These items are presented to the board for action and will require a motion and a vote. Action item A is presented by Todd Davis.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. As you recall, action item A is related to Section 2 of Senate Bill 265, which we had a discussion in our previous board meeting in June, which tasked the EPSB to create and establish standards and guidance for a mentoring program for districts. Since the meeting, we worked diligently with our stakeholder group, so I appreciate all their hard work. And we have created the document, which has been provided in your board materials. Since the upload of the guidance document, we did receive information on the new KRS, and that will be 161031, and we will update that prior to posting. But this will be a living document, and we will update with guidance as well as resources as things move forward. So we're asking for approval on the guidance document to share with districts and post online.
Thank you, Todd. At this time, I will need a motion.
So moved.
And that was Susan Reber with the motion, I believe. And do I have a second?
Second.
I think I saw Meredith Pittman there with the second. The motion before the board is to approve the guidance for the Kentucky Educator Mentorship Program. Is there any discussion?
I have a comment or two since it's a living document. There were a couple of things on page 8 that I just wanted to emphasize that I guess I have a little concerns with or worries about. And that is one on the adjacent school district being an option for that mentorship, just because there can be such a difference between the school districts. And I totally understand that this is guidance, but seeing as how it's a living document, I wanted to bring that up. A mentor from Madison County is going to be very different than a mentor from Estill County, right? And so that is something that I wanted to bring up. And then the mention of the teams on page 8 as well. There's no definition that I saw, and Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, but There's no definition of who should be a part of that team. And I know we're leaving that pretty open to the districts, but the way that I read it is it could just be the mentor and the mentee as the team. And so those are just things that I wanted to make sure that we kind of keep an eye on as we go forward into this new frontier.
Yeah, Amber, if you're referring to what we used to refer to as the OKTIP committee, we referenced that as part of the guidance as well, just so that they could associate that mindset with it. And so, but we can look at some wording to emphasize that a little bit more prevalently.
Any other discussion?
I had something real quick. Todd, I just wanted to say thanks to you and your team. I know this was a big feat to get all this together. And I know we had good conversation at our last meeting, kind of about the direction you guys were going to take. And if I missed this, please accept my apologies. But when you mentioned like stakeholder groups that were involved between our last meeting and now, can you just share some of that insight of who the stakeholders were?
Sharon, do you actually have the list handy? I know Dr. Amanda Ellis was on board, as well as Elizabeth Dinkins as part of our EPP group. Justin Mitchell and Amber, you were on there but weren't able to attend the second meeting. We also had some OTL folks, Mickey Ray and Misty Higgins, that participated. Sharon, do you have some others?
Stacy Noah from P3, Rosa Hurley from TAC, David Young from CKEC, Gretchen Wetzel from WKEC, of course, Amanda Ellis, Rhonda Caldwell from KASA, Eddie Campbell from KEA, Jim Flynn, but I don't think he actually was able to attend either one of them. And then we had two from OCTE, Beth Engel and Linda Jackson. Can y'all hear me?
Mhm.
Okay. And
No, that's wonderful. Thanks for sharing,
Yes.
and thanks for organizing and looping all those people in.
Absolutely.
Any other discussion? And Corinne is right. Susan Kesey was also on there as well, representing WKU. And I just want to, not a discussion, but I've just been being in the process, want to thank Todd and Sharon for all of their work and their teams, that it has been a lot since the June meeting to get a document started and completed. I know it's a living document, but it's impressive. And then bringing all the stakeholder groups together. And I really do think that there was a consensus with all of the stakeholder groups. So I think the feedback was good from our first meeting to the second meeting, and then getting the documents now. So thank you both again, Todd and Sharon and everyone else who worked on it. Any other discussion? Hearing none, the motion, I already said the motion. The motion before the board is to approve the guidance for the Kentucky Educator Mentorship Program. Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Diane Berry,
Diane Berry, aye.
Amanda Ellis,
Amanda Ellis, yes.
CJ Fryer,
CJ Fryer, yes.
Amy Lingo,
Amy Lingo, yes.
Corinne Murphy,
Corinne Murphy, yes.
Meredith Pittman,
Meredith Pittman, yes.
Susan Reber,
Susan Reber, yes.
Vice Chair Snell,
Yes.
Chair Mitchell.
Justin Mitchell, yes.
Voting is complete.
Thank you, and the motion passes. Next, we have action item B, presented by Cassie Trueblood.
Good morning. Action item B is the proposed amendment to 16 KAR 1030, which is the regulation that sets the standards around the educator case process. This is going to be on page 28 of your agenda book, and then the draft regulation starting on page 30. What is proposed before you is both an emergency and ordinary amendment to the regulation. This is because House Bill 300 goes into effect today. So to have a regulation in place, We do need to file that amendment as an emergency, which will go into effect upon filing, and then the ordinary regulation will complete the entire LRC process, and when it becomes effective, replace the emergency. The emergency and ordinary are identical, and the draft regulation was before you for a first reading in June. Brianna Listerman presented that. The board had some discussions on that, and I do have with me today Nora, who has joined the role, taken over the position that Brianna has vacated. She started that officially July 1st, and she and I have had a lot of meetings, review, and discussion of the regulation. You will notice there are some differences between this one and the one that you saw in June. Specifically, as we were going through it, we realized that we had put a lot of the new procedures in the regulation that are already specified in statute. So because that was already in the statute, it did not need to be in the regulation. It was helpful for us in visualizing everything. But we did go ahead and remove that from the regulation. We also reviewed the notice requirements. Specifically, House Bill 300 is very specific about the notices that go to complaining parties, if those are non-superintendent complaining parties, as well as the notices that go to superintendents. Superintendents now will only receive that notice when it is a complaint or a report that they have submitted, and they will then get notice every time there is action, whereas a non-superintendent complainant will receive notice upon the second review if the board finds sufficient credible evidence, and at that time the notice can only specify that it is going for further proceedings. There is a provision in there that if the final action of the board impacts the employment ability, that there will be notice to the employing superintendent. Obviously, if the individual is suspended, they are revoked, they are no longer able to fulfill that certified duty, then there would be notice that goes to the superintendent then. As I mentioned, the draft is on page 30 of your book, and we are asking the board to approve both the ordinary and emergency amendment so that we are able to file immediately following this meeting. Are there any questions for either myself or for Nora?
Well, hearing no questions at this time, I will need a motion.
CJ Fryer, I make a motion to approve the emergency and ordinary amendment to 16 KR 1030.
Thank you, Mr. Fryer. Is there a second?
Second.
Murphy, second.
All right. Thank you, Dean Murphy, for the second. The motion before the board is to approve the emergency and ordinary amendments to 16 KAR 1030. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Diane Berry,
Diane Berry, yes.
Amanda Ellis,
Amanda Ellis, yes.
CJ Fryer,
CJ Fryer, yes.
Amy Lingo,
Amy Lingo, yes.
Corinne Murphy,
Corinne Murphy, yes.
Meredith Pittman,
Meredith Pittman, yes.
Susan Reber,
Susan Reber, yes.
Vice Chair Snell,
Amber Snell, yes.
Chair Mitchell.
Justin Mitchell, yes.
Voting is complete.
Thank you, and the motion passes. Next, we have action item C.
Action item C is on page 43 with the procedures on page 45 of your agenda book. These are the revisions to the procedures to go along with House Bill 300 and the changes that have just been approved to the regulation and those that have been implemented in the statute. With these, there were, again, some additional revisions since you saw these in June. We did feel that at this time we needed to remove a few sections so that they could be further developed. The one around character and fitness, the admonishment appeals, Additionally, there are some notices and processes that we are hoping will make their way into updates to the Kentucky Educator Credentialing System, or KEX, but at this time it is not able to do this. So we did remove those provisions as well. We are hopeful that as we are able to develop those additional sections and update the processes in KEX, that we will be bringing this back to you at future meetings with those additions. But these are the revisions that at this time are able to be in place for the procedures to accompany the revised statute and the revised regulation. If you are in agreement with these, we would ask that the board approve the procedures. But are there any questions?
Cassie, was this the one that had the purple copy as well, or was that the previous one?
Yes, the track changes version was the one that you saw in June. That was in, I think, the attachment as well. The clean copy, however, was in the agenda book because the track changes version is extremely hard to follow. So we did provide you with the clean, but the track changes from June if you needed that.
The note that I had was under the timeline section 3.
Stop.
It says closed session shall occur once per month. I didn't know with our proposed calendar, since we are possibly meeting more than once a month, if that should say at minimum once a month, or if in some way that would lock us into only meeting once a month.
And Amber, are you looking at the one that's in the agenda book or the other version?
The other version, that's where I made my notes at.
Yes, so the other version, we did correct that into that final version because yes, when you reviewed this in June, we were originally kind of talking and hopeful that maybe we could do once a month. But as we looked closer at those timelines, realized that that was not a possibility.
Sorry, I reviewed the one and then realized I'm not redoing the second one too.
Are there any other questions? All right, well, at this time, I will need a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. The motion before the board is to approve the amended procedures. Are there any discussions? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Diane Berry,
Diane Berry, yes.
Amanda Ellis,
Amanda Ellis, yes.
CJ Fryer,
CJ Fryer, yes.
Amy Lingo,
Amy Lingo, yes.
Corinne Murphy,
Corinne Murphy, yes.
Meredith Pittman,
Meredith Pittman, yes.
Susan Reber,
Susan Reber, yes.
Vice Chair Snell,
Amber Snell, yes.
Chair Mitchell.
Justin Mitchell, yes.
Voting is complete.
Great, and the motion passes. Next, we have action item D.
And action item D, as Vice Chair Snail alluded to there, is the proposed board meeting schedule that has been updated to be able to meet the timelines that are now in place for the educator case process under House Bill 300. This was brought to you in June as well, and the board had some feedback, especially around the in-person meeting and the difficulty that sometimes is faced by our teacher members in getting out of the classroom on a Monday, especially when on Mondays, historically, we've seen an even greater difficulty in obtaining substitute teachers. So that with additional feedback from all members, we have again updated that schedule so that the in-person full board meetings would be moved, though they would still occur within that same week that they were proposed. They would now be on Tuesdays. However, the virtual meetings that are set to occur after school with the purpose of just reviewing educator cases and getting that closed session review in, those would remain on Monday afternoons. A copy of the proposed schedule is included in your materials. That is on page 63. If approved today, we will be sending you a copy of that and also working on the letters that we do send out to all of our superintendents for our teacher members to let them know about those dates, to remind them that we are able to cover the cost of a substitute, to ask for their assistance in allowing you to attend the meetings. And then if there are any additional administrators that you need copied on that, we will ask for that as well. But are there any questions regarding the schedule? If not, we would ask that you approve the meeting schedule.
All right, thank you, Ms. Trueblood. At this time, I will need a motion.
I make a motion to approve the meeting schedule.
Thank you, Vice Chair Snell. Is there a second?
Second.
And I didn't see who it was. I'm sorry.
It was Corinne.
Oh, thanks. Dr. Murphy with the second. The motion before the board is to approve the proposed EPSB meeting schedule. Is there any discussion?
Just a quick note of thanks to Cassie and the team for all the work putting this together, getting feedback from everyone. I know that was quite an undertaking, so thanks again.
Any other discussion? Hearing none at this time, Ms. Chester, please call the roll.
Diane Berry,
Diane Berry, yes.
Amanda Ellis,
Amanda Ellis, yes.
CJ Fryer,
CJ Fryer, yes.
Amy Lingo,
Amy Lingo, yes.
Corinne Murphy,
Corinne Murphy, yes.
Meredith Pittman,
Meredith Pittman, yes.
Susan Reber,
Susan Reber, yes.
Vice Chair Snell,
Amber Snell, yes.
Chair Mitchell.
Justin Mitchell, yes.
Voting is complete.
Thank you, and the motion passes. Next, we have action item E.
Action item E is a proposed amendment, both emergency and ordinary, yet again, to 16 KAR 2030, which is the regulation that sets the requirements for substitute teachers. This regulation is being proposed in both the emergency and ordinary format because it is being updated to comply with amendments to KRS 161102 that were made by House Bill 387. Again, House Bill 387 goes into effect today. So the emergency is needed to have the regulation in place. With this amendment, we are now having the application requirements for all 3 substitute teacher certificates that were created by House Bill 387. The board may remember we have had some discussions about this bill through your legislative updates, as well as the amended after comments version of the emergency teaching certificate regulation that the board approved, where you removed the references to substitute teacher applications from that regulation so that they could be addressed in this one. The 3 certificates that are created are the 1-year emergency certificate, which is now available to high school graduates or those with either a high school diploma or high school equivalency. There is a 5-year substitute certificate that is available for those with a bachelor's degree, and then a 10-year substitute certificate for those that previously held a Kentucky teaching certificate or those that hold or previously held an out-of-state teaching certificate. Those were the requirements of what before today was our 5-year substitute certificate. So the application is already available for that. It is just now being turned into a 10-year certificate. The emergency 1-year certificate was also already in place, but previously required 64 hours of college credit. That application is also being revised to just note that that requires verification of the high school diploma or equivalency. And then the new application is being created for the 5-year certificate. That information is in the regulation as well, again, as we've set forward all 3 of those certificates, but then also removed the emergency non-certified personnel program. That was a program that was previously in place because of the difficulty in finding those with the 64 hours of college credit. This was a separate program that allowed districts, if they were unable to find certified substitutes, to utilize that program with the revisions that were made in the statute and the allowance for individuals with a high school diploma or equivalency to now qualify for a certificate. That negates the need for this program, so that has been removed. Are there any questions regarding the bill or the regulation?
I don't have a question, more of a comment, just for the good of whoever is watching, right? So I just want to encourage districts to still partner with universities around opportunities for substitute teaching. They truly are. There are students who are freshmen, sophomore, junior, senior who are ready to be in the classroom and want to be in the classroom, and that's a good opportunity for them. And I want to encourage EPPs to consider how substitute teaching can work within some of those early field opportunities. Obviously, it can't replace all because you need some mentorship, you need some guidance, but I don't want the idea that now we have this giant pool of people with high school degrees that can be substitute teachers to really replace that concept that this is a really good opportunity for EPPs and districts to partner around opportunities in the classroom.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, at this time I will need a motion.
This is Amy Lingo. I'll make the motion to accept the regulation.
Thank you, Dr. Lingo. Is there a second?
Amber Snell, second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Snell. The motion before the board is to approve the emergency and ordinary amendment to 16 KAR 2030. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chester, please call the roll.
Diane Berry,
Diane Berry, yes.
Amanda Ellis,
Amanda Ellis, yes.
CJ Fryer,
CJ Fryer, yes.
Amy Lingo,
Amy Lingo, yes.
Corinne Murphy,
Corinne Murphy, yes.
Meredith Pittman,
Meredith Pittman, yes.
Susan Reber,
Susan Reber, yes.
Vice Chair Snell,
Amber Snell, yes.
Chair Mitchell.
Justin Mitchell, yes.
Voting is complete.
Thank you, and the motion passes. Last, we have action item F.
Yes, and Dr. Murphy has set that up very well as we transition into this one. This is an extension of the student-teacher flexibilities that have been in place for the last few years, extending those through the 24-25 school year. We had originally worked on amendments to the student teaching regulation 16 KAR 5040 that was going to incorporate these flexibilities permanently. The board heard that for a first reading in February, but then as the legislative session progressed, you saw some additional requirements that were placed in House Bill 162 that would require the student teaching rubric and some additional placements for those preparing for mathematics. So in April, the board did decide to table the discussion of the regulation for those additional pieces to be fleshed out and come back before you at a later meeting. At that time, the board was still supportive of continuing these flexibilities, which include the remote student teaching observations for all EPPs, the allowance of student teachers to maintain classified employment, the allowance for student teachers to utilize experience as an emergency substitute to meet the requirements of student teaching, and then also waiving that prohibition of receiving payment for student teaching, especially in light of the allowance of the student teacher stipend that Kia is overseeing and will be implementing this fall. So while that was discussed in an information item, because the regulation was tabled, there was never action taken on it. So to give that additional flexibilities for our student teachers, we would ask that you approve the extension of the student teacher waivers for the 24-25 school year. Are there any questions?
Hearing none at this time, I will need a motion.
Corinne Murphy, I make a motion to extend the student teaching flexibilities for the 24-25 school year.
Thank you, Dr. Murphy. Is there a second?
Susan, I'll
Amber?
second.
I think I saw Susan's name light up. So second is from Susan Reber. The motion before the board is to extend the student teaching flexibilities for the 24-25 school year. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Diane Berry,
Diane Berry, yes.
Amanda Ellis,
Amanda Ellis, yes.
CJ Fryer,
CJ Fryer, yes.
Amy Lingo,
Amy Lingo, yes.
Corinne Murphy,
Corinne Murphy, yes.
Meredith Pittman,
Meredith Pittman, yes.
Susan Reber,
Susan Reber, yes.
Vice Chair Snell,
Snell, yes.
Chair Mitchell.
Justin Mitchell, yes.
Voting is complete.
Thank you, and the motion passes. That brings us to the end of our agenda. The board is scheduled to meet next on Monday, July 29th. And at this time, I will need a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn for today.
Thank you, Vice Chair Snell. Is there a second?
Second, Amanda Ellis.
I heard Amanda Ellis's name. So Dr. Ellis, you second it. The motion before the board is to adjourn. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Diane Berry,
Diane Berry, yes.
Amanda Ellis,
Amanda Ellis, yes.
CJ Fryer,
CJ Fryer, yes.
Amy Lingo,
Amy Lingo, yes.
Corinne Murphy,
Corinne Murphy, yes.
Meredith Pittman,
Meredith Pittman, yes.
Susan Reber,
Susan Reber, yes.
Vice Chair Snell,
Amber Snell, yes.
Chair Mitchell.
Justin Mitchell, yes.
Voting is complete.
All right, we are now adjourned. Thank you all for making time in your busy schedule this summer.